السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الحمد لله ثم الحمد لله. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونستنصره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، إلها واحدا أحدا صمدا، لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. وأشهد أن نبينا وعظيمنا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وحبيبه. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين، وبعد. يقول جل جلاله في محكم التنزيل: شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان، فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصمه، ومن كان مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر، يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر، ولتكملوا العدة ولتكبروا الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون. This ayah is being recited on every minbar probably all across the Muslim world today, and probably next week and the week after. And the unity that comes with that is something that I find quite fascinating and beautiful, that we as Muslims acknowledge seasons at the same time. We find the value of these seasons together, and we remember certain timings all at once, and we celebrate them and we engage and embrace them all at once as well. And today, the final khutbah before Ramadan, I'm going to offer you some ideas or some thoughts regarding what we should do throughout the holy month and how to maximize our benefit from it and make sure that this Ramadan is indeed a turning point for us all. This is the motto that I carry, and I hope that everyone here does the same. Make Ramadan this year a turning point for yourself. Even if you've done this before, and even if you have decided at some point in your life that you were going to live differently, do it again. There is no end to how many times you can do this in a lifetime. I do this every year. Every year, come into Ramadan, walk into this month that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so generously presents you with on an annual basis. Walk into it with the intention of making it a turning point for yourself, where you change on an internal level, on a level that is not detectable by others, but will become apparent as time progresses. Make the intention of making Ramadan the turning point for yourself in terms of the decisions that you will make afterwards and the choices that you will make within your life regarding your personal progression as a human being and the status of the ummah of which you are a part of. And I can't imagine a time that would be more suitable for doing that than this blessed month of Ramadan within the context of the time that we are living in. Before I go through some of these points, I want to share with you why that's important, because the first part of this Ramadanic plan will indeed talk about the concept of making or fixing your intention. Never does. It's impossible. Mustahil. It's I will live and die, and never will this ever work. Will ever technology actually serve me ever? When we talk about perfecting your intention and taking time, this is what I think the intention should be based upon. Wallahu a'lam. And this is, I'm going to articulate for you why or how I understand the events of the last 150 or 160 days. And this is my understanding of it, and you feel free to disagree with me, but this is how I see it, and this is how I believe you should see it, even if it's flawed. When we watch and we see the fact that over the last 150 days, they have spilled the blood of 30,000 civilians, the majority of them being women and children. So over 50,000 women and children, civilians their blood has been spilled over the past 150 days. When you watch that, you're in awe of the fact that it occurred in the 21st century as the world continued to watch. And you're forced to ask yourself, how is this possible? How is this continuously going on? At what point will this end? Aside from the blood that's being spilled, people are being starved to death, and the images that are emerging from Gaza and from the Holy Land are extremely concerning and very disturbing on so many levels. This is my understanding of why this is occurring. You see, that government over there, this regime, would not have the audacity to actually spill so much blood if they didn't feel that they were fully supported. If they didn't feel that they had unconditional support from governments that had a say in how the world actually works, they wouldn't do it. If they felt that at some point they were going to be held accountable, they wouldn't have done this. But because they felt that they have unconditional support from all of the major powers in the world, our country as one of them, even though we are not actually seen as a major power, but we're still a part of that imperialistic or that Western group of countries, because they felt that they had unconditional support, they didn't really feel the need to consider any other option. So they spilt all of this blood and continue to do so. Now, had they felt that they didn't have that degree of support, had there been some degree of pressure from these Western countries, they would be much more cautious with the amount of blood they would spill, and they would be quicker to look for a way out. They would be quicker to accept some sort of deal that would allow their hostages or whatever to come back to home and replace them with whatever prisoners they're going. They would look for a way to actually cease fire and end this blood spill, had they felt that there was pressure coming to them from the Western world, but they didn't. The amount of pressure that they were feeling was very minimal. And it wasn't something that was going to threaten their existence or threaten their alliances that they had with them. So they continued to do what they continue to do today. But had they felt that there was some sort or some form of pressure being applied upon them by the imperialistic powers of this world, the Western countries specifically, they would be a little bit more cautious. They would hold back a little bit, scale down. Consider maybe ending it at a certain point and figuring a way out of all of it. But they didn't. And the reason they didn't is that because the countries that we're a part of, they didn't see the need to pressure them. They didn't see the need to pressure them because they're their allies and they don't see why they would. So they allow them to do whatever they wanted. And the reason that these countries did not pressure them is because the leaders of this country, which we know now, have no moral compass whatsoever, do not care about ethicality. They worship 2 or 3 gods, money, votes, and maybe some skewed apocalyptic understanding of the end of time. But that's all that ever governs them, and it's all that ever has governed them. They don't really care about anything else. That's the God gods that they worship, had they felt that they were being pressured in terms of their status, in terms of their ability to be re-elected, in terms of their financial interests, they would make sure that the government that was doing this felt that pressure. But they didn't. They didn't feel enough pressure. They didn't feel that anything was actually going to change, so they continued to unconditionally support that regime that continued to kill people in the thousands, reaching to 30,000 civilians that have been buried under their rubble and murdered mercilessly in a very small piece of land in a very short period of time. Had they felt more pressure here, they would have felt more pressure there, and this would have stopped at some point a little bit earlier. We wouldn't be at the eve of Ramadan still watching the news and praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for an end of this saga. And the reason that they didn't feel any pressure here is because we are disorganized. We are disorganized. We don't have that, we have not generated the ability to apply that pressure to the people who are supposedly supposed to be representing our interests in the world around us. We don't have that ability. We don't have to do it. We don't have the financial ability, and we don't have the political ability. We don't. This is the hard fact. We just don't. Even though we don't lack numbers, we don't lack expertise, we don't lack wealth. We just lack organization. Muslims, because of maybe years and years and years of colonialism and political tyranny and istibdad that most of us come from the background of, have unfortunately fallen into the trap of feeling comfortable with a lifestyle that is very self-centered and very focused on just day-to-day occurrences, just taking care of myself, my family, making sure I have enough nice little cushion of wealth, have my barbecues in the summer, have a nice car during the winter, go places during the, make sure I have my nice vacation, just living in that way. And Muslims have never historically been like that. The moment you accepted Islam into your life, you became immediately someone who was very sensitive to what was happening around them in the world. You're very aware and you're very alert, and you continue to speak out for that which is just and correct and righteous, and you live your life trying to do that, and that's how you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But because we stopped doing that and we became very self-centered, we lost vision of the bigger picture here. So when it was needed, we didn't have the organization. We tried, we scrambled, we tried to come up with something, but that doesn't happen overnight. The amount of organization required to actually apply pressure on people in office so they change their policies, because they will, you'll be surprised. No people who stand by, there are no politicians who have any actual causes they believe in. Just accept that. The only cause they believe in is the cause that keeps them in their position and keeps their pocket full of money. Nothing else exists out there. It's always been like that, by the way. It's not new. Didn't happen in the 20th century. It's not just for the Western countries. It's all across the globe. That's how these people get into these positions, because that's how they are. They care about one or two things, and that's it. They're very tunnel visioned. Inshallah, one day Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant us true leadership as an ummah. Leadership that will reflect in a positive way, not just on Muslims, but on people all across the globe in a way that will bring khair to everyone, which is actually what our mission and our vision and our hope as Muslims is in this world. In my opinion, that is why what happened continues to happen. And that's my opinion. I believe that the reason is because we didn't do our job. We were too busy, arguing on whether we Sum Ramadan based on moon sighting or calculation. And we spent too much time arguing about stuff that have no merit whatsoever. We felt that we had the luxury to actually argue about these things. We thought that we actually had time to sit down and talk about these little petty problems, forgetting that when we don't take care of ourselves, when we don't value each other's lives and we don't value the lives of our ummah and the status of our ummah and focus on the bigger picture, and we're willing to work with one another and put our wealth and put our time, even though we don't necessarily agree with one another, even though we don't even like each other, it doesn't matter, because we understand that we belong to the same ummah and that our interests are the same, and that when we don't, others pay for it. When we don't, a portion of our ummah will pay for it with their blood. And now we've seen that. So the question that I have is, so now what? So now what? What's going to change after this? After you understand that this was the reason, now what's going to happen? Are we going to see change in the way that we behave as Muslims living in Western countries and minorities? Are we going to actually start doing something that is productive, that is helpful, that is beneficial? Are we going to start working together and strengthen our own community and make sure that we have the identity, the education, and the confidence that our youth require so they can grow up as good Muslims? Are we going to put our wealth and our time to make sure that we push forward groups that can advocate on our behalf and speak and put our voice out there, make sure our opinion is not only heard, but also respected and considered when policies are being made and when decisions are being made? Or do we just go back to the exact way things were before once a ceasefire happens? I just hope that somehow it doesn't. It's easier in life if you can just put your hand somewhere
in your visual field. It's really nice if you can just do that. Just you have a visual field, just put your hand somewhere where it can just block out something that, and just every time you move, just make sure it just stays blocked so you don't have to see it. Every time you move, just try to not to see it because you don't want to look at it. Because looking at it requires doing something about it. So we prefer just maybe to ignore it. Maybe just ignore that. We've been doing that for a long time. Most of us are walking around with like 4 or 5 hands. Because there's so many things that are right there that require your interest, requires your dedication, your time, your care, your empathy, your effort. It requires you. It's calling out for you. For you. When I was in Syria, a lot of the work that I did talking to people was trying to change the Armageddon-based understanding of the world that I felt was affecting how Muslims back there understood their faith. When I say apocalyptic and Armageddon, what I'm talking about is that understanding of the end of the world, where you sit around and say, well, it says somewhere that they'll get out, so give me the popcorn and I'll wait for them to get out. Or it says at some point the Muslims are going to be strong again, so I'll just sit back and wait. Someone will, look, nothing's coming, right? There's no buses coming. There's no hero on a bus that's coming. No, that's it. This is it. This is all you got right here. The people that you see around you, that's it. Nothing is coming. No one is on their way. There is no hero that is going to emerge from the horizon or come out of the woodwork, and nothing is happening. This understanding of the world is extremely ill. It's very unhealthy, and it was not prophetic in any form or manner. He didn't teach them that, alayhi salatu wasalam. He left a generation of people who, when they saw a problem or they saw a challenge, they went and they dealt with it personally. They dedicated their lives towards dealing with it. They didn't wait for something to happen, for some external occurrence to actually happen for them to see change. They didn't wait for anyone or anything. And we're an ummah that has turned to be very passive. We just wait around thinking that someone else should fix the problem. Why don't they say this? Why doesn't he say that? Yeah, no one's going to say anything. The only person who should say something is you. It's you and I. That's it. That's all we've got. Look at me, I look at you. This is it. There's nothing else. Stop, wait, there's nothing coming. This is it. This is not pessimistic, by the way, even though I am. That's not actually, helps you understand what our role is. Ya'ini, it's you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put you here, you have a role. Just fulfill it. If he didn't believe in you, subhanahu wa ta'ala, he would not have put you here. You would have never existed. You exist because there is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees within you that you may not even see within yourself, but you have to learn to. And that's why you're here, with the opportunity to make a difference and do something and change things. And it's possible. It's happened before and it can happen again. And I can't think of a better time than at the eve of Ramadan for us to make that intention. This will be our turning point. As Muslims, we are going to be better. I'm going to be better. I will not go back after Ramadan to the same lifestyle I had beforehand. I'm going to improve as a person. I'm going to go back and revise my lifestyle, my life choices, my decisions, my priorities. I'm going to change them so I can be someone different. You're going to find, when you do that, you'll find people who are doing the same. So you won't walk alone, I guarantee you. Wallahi, and historically there have been times where Muslims have walked alone, where they've been in places where there was no one else, where there's truly ghuraba, truly strangers, where they can't find others. You're not like that. When you do this, when you make a decision to change your life, you will find those who are doing the same, and you'll have companionship, and you'll find company, people who actually walk with you, and that is beautiful and meaningful. We're a part of a community that still cares. It's just, unfortunately, we have not hit the threshold of caring enough. Just the threshold has not been reached yet, where enough of us do, so that we can organize internally and actually make an impact. That's all that's missing. Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. And you'll see change. The world has been changed by fewer people with lesser reasons. By fewer people with lesser reasons. And I don't know what else to tell you. At the eve of this blessed month, as we continue to watch children fil mahd dying of preventable causes, things that a couple of miles away, there are preventable causes, a few miles away, but deprived of it, for no reason whatsoever, aside from, I don't know. This is my understanding of it. I could be wrong. You're welcome to have a different theory. But let me tell you this. If you have a theory that does not involve somehow your shortcoming, sorry to tell you, that's not Islamic at all. And that's not what he taught, alayhi salatu wasalam. He refused the Quran refuses for you to look at a situation that is negative and not see your shortcoming as a cause of it somehow, no matter how small that may be. Are you telling me you look in the mirror every day and say, impeccable? Impeccable, mashallah alaik. You are majestic, amazing, magnificent. Not one mistake, you are perfect. Mashallah alaik. If everyone was like you, that's what you do. If that's what you do, then this khutbah, you have bigger problems than this khutbah. Otherwise, you look in the mirror and say, what have you been doing? What should you have been doing? Don't you look back sometimes when you were 15 or 20 and you remember the voice of that younger person who was much more idealistic and much more hopeful of the future and felt that they belonged to an ummah a little bit more and wonder what happened to that person? Bring them back. Bring her back. They still live. They're inside somewhere. Just bring them back. Bring them back. Bring that person back. Wallahi, that's the only person that was ever worth living to begin with. Bring them back. I know the tsunami of life, the hurricanes and the storms and the tides and the waves of life will slap you around so hard and throw you around so far that at some point you're so disoriented, you're standing in the middle of nowhere, have no idea where you're faced or where you're going anymore. And that's understandable. That's a part of life. But that person who had the compass still lives inside you somewhere. Just find him. Just find her and bring her out again. Let that person, listen to that person again. Listen to the way that person wanted to live their lives, the way they saw the future, and the way they saw their role in the future. And that's what life's about. What he really did for them, alayhi salatu wasalam, he sparked something inside of the Sahaba, made them feel youthful again. He made the people in their 40s and 50s and 60s feel like, yes, there's something to live for now. There's a reason for me to actually be better than I was before. That he sparked in them, alayhi salatu wasalam, he ignited something. He ignited something that they always knew was there. They always knew it was inside of them, but it's just so much clutter and time, and you forget about it. And he brought it back, alayhi salatu wasalam, because he lived like that. He came with that person whom he was. He knew what he was doing. So he came like as he was, alayhi salatu wasalam. And people loved him for it. And then they said, well, let's see that version of me. And then they brought that version forward, and it's a beautiful version to live. Because a version that is much more dedicated, much more committed, has way more grit, is less selfish and self-centered, doesn't worry too much about petty things, and is focused on an understanding of life that is much more beautiful, much more profound. And that's what we need to, that's the intention that you should have right before Ramadan. Walk into Ramadan with that one and see how that serves you throughout the month. You'll enjoy the month more. You'll have more khushu', you'll have more hudur. You'll find your heart and yourself in Ramadan again, and you'll sob over the time that you wasted, and you'll feel bad about the mistakes that you've made, and it's good, it's healthy. It's healthy. You're crying to the one who cares, the one who can actually forgive you, the one who can heal you. Because everyone else has nothing to offer you really, aside from maybe an ear. But the one who actually can heal you, offer you something, who listens, who cares, who's going to help you, he's listening, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Offer it. Come to him with that. And then you'll see that you'll walk away at the end of it with something much more valuable than you could have ever imagined. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه يغفر لكم يا فوز المستغفرين استغفر الله. الحمد لله وحده وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اتبع نهجه ووفى عهده. إخواني وأخواتي، ها قد أقبل عليكم شهر عظيم مبارك، شهر فرض الله صيامه وجعل قيام ليله تطوعا، شهر فيه ليلة خير من 1000 شهر، شهر الصبر والصبر ثوابه الجنة، شهر المواساة، شهر يزاد فيه رزق المؤمن، شهر يعتق فيه الله رقاب عباده من النار، شهر يجيب الله فيه الدعاء ويفتح فيه أبواب الجنة ويغلق فيه أبواب النار، وينادي مناد على عباده أن يا باغي الخير أقبل ويا باغي الشر أقصر، ويفتح الله سبحانه وتعالى على عباده وعلى قلوبهم فيقربهم إليه ويناديهم إليه فيأتونه ويأتون بيوته ويتقربون إليه سبحانه وتعالى كما لم يفعلوا من قبل. إخواني وأخواتي، أخلصوا النية قبل رمضان، أخلصوا النية قبل رمضان لوجهه الكريم سبحانه وتعالى. هذا شهر النفحات، سبحانه وتعالى يعني يتفضل علينا برحماته ومغفرته وعتقه وعطائه ومنه كما لا يفعل في أوقات أخرى من العام، رجاء أن يصلح من أحوالنا وأن يسدد من خطانا وأن يزكي من نفوسنا. وليس علينا إلا أن نأتيه سبحانه وتعالى وقد فتحنا له قلوبنا وقد بسطنا له صدورنا وقد رغمت له أنوفنا. فإذا أتيناه على هذه الحال نتضرع إليه نسأله أن يصلحنا وأن يصلح بنا وأن يهدينا وأن يهدي بنا وأن يجعلنا من الصالحين المصلحين، فحاشاه سبحانه وتعالى أن يردنا خائبين. نأتيه سبحانه وتعالى رجاء ما عنده من العطاء، رجاء ما عنده من الأجر والنعيم، وخشية لما عنده من العقاب العادل، ورغبة في إحياء أمة حبيبه عليه الصلاة والسلام، ورغبة في إنقاذ الأطفال الجوعى والثكالى واليتامى وأولئك الذين ليس لهم إلا هو سبحانه وتعالى. فإذا دخلت رمضان بهذه النية، ودخلت رمضان بنية أن تصلح من نفسك وأن تغير من حالك وأن تعود إلى سالف عصرك حيث كانت الأمور أبسط، لما كان الإنسان قلبه أطرى وأخلص وأرقى، وكان بعيدا عن ترهات هذه الدنيا وعن سفاسفها وعن الركض والجري وراء ما فيها من الغرور، أن يعود الإنسان إلى ذلك الطاهر النقي الذي كان يحب الله ويحب رسول الله ويحب هذا الدين وفيه رغبة أن ينصر هذه الأمة. عد إلى ذلك الإنسان، أخرجه من خبايا فؤادك، أخرجه وما زال موجودا، لم يمت بعد، لما يمت هذا الذي هو جزء منك ما زال في داخلك، أخرجه وانفض عنه الغبار، واسمح له أن يكلمك مرة أخرى وأن تستمع إليه وأن تعود إلى ذلك الشخص الذي كنت عليه قديما. هكذا كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم، ما تغير عليه الصلاة والسلام في حياته أبدا، وعلم الصحابة ألا يتغيروا فلم يتغيروا، وعاشوا أعمارهم وقد علموا مرادهم وقد رأوا بأم أعينهم أهدافهم فمشوا إليها، لا يصدهم ولا يردهم أحد ولا يخافون في الله لومة لائم. اجعل نيتك في هذا الشهر الكريم أن تغير من نفسك وأن تسمح لرمضان أن يفعل فيك ما فعله في أنبياء الله سبحانه وتعالى والصالحين من عباده والصحابة والغر الميامين أجمعين. Brothers and sisters, I don't have time to share with you the Ramadanic plan, so I'm going to quickly, it won't listen to me anyways, which is what I've come to accept. I'm going to share with you a few points in terms of, I'm going to share with you a few points to think about, inshallah ta'ala. Here we go. Here are 10 things to think about in Ramadan. Here are 10 things. Take number 1, your intention. And I spent this whole khutbah just talking to you about intention because I don't think there's anything that even comes remotely close to how important it is. Have the right intentions and things will change throughout the month and after it. If you don't have a good intention, then things will happen, but you won't really have a plan for it. Make sure that you fast with excellence. Do your best to fast well. Don't just fast from food and drink. Fast from haram. Fast from gossip. Fast from looking at things you shouldn't look at and listening to things you shouldn't listen to and saying things you shouldn't say. Fast appropriately. Stay farther away from haram. Ramadan gives you a buffer. It draws the line for you and says, there's halal, here's halal, and here's haram. You're standing in halal, and it pushes the line this way. Now halal is no longer halal. Eating and drinking, for me to sip water right now is halal. In a few days from now, it'll be haram for me to do it. So I'm pushed over there. You're farther away from haram. The buffer is bigger. It's better for you. It's healthier. Your heart is closer to Allah because you're farther away from haram. Don't stop doing halal things and find yourself falling into haram things. It makes absolutely no sense at all. Invest in your salah. Invest in your salah, brothers and sisters. Invest in your salah, whether it's doing it in congregation as much as possible. Fajr and Isha as a minimum, as a bare minimum. But then if you're at home, Asr and Dhuhr, and whenever you can pray in congregation, pray in congregation. The fard is the most important. It has the most ajr in it. And then invest in your taraweeh, specifically one that has a khatma in it, and stand with the imam until the imam is done. We stand in lines for an hour and a half every day without even thinking about it. We'll stand for food for an hour and a half. We'll stand for our driver's license for an hour and a half. And then suddenly when it's for Taraweeh, you need a few chairs and every single joint in your body is hurting and you need to leave because... Please invest. It's for your own. This is for you. This is for your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Stand there, open the Quran, and listen to it as being recited by the imams. We run the same thing every year. It's 13 rak'ah here. It's a page and a half per rak'ah. We read the whole Quran within 29 nights. We have over 20 imams this year. Alhamdulillah, we've been able to send them all across the city. The number of huffaz is increasing. It's a beautiful thing. It's something I barely do anything aside from pray Isha anymore. But stand there and open the Quran. You get tired, sit. You get tired, go take a break. Go to the bathroom, drink some water, come back again. But stick around. Train yourself to pray. Train yourself to... Prayer, it requires practice in order for you to make it better. To improve it, if you don't pray well, practice. Pray more, and you'll see the difference that you'll find in your life. And choose a masjid that's the closest to you. Doesn't matter to me where you pray. Look, where's the closest masjid? And go there and salli and stay with the imam and attend the witr and make the dua. The barakah that you will find when you do this is something that you will continue to remember for the rest of your life. Connect with the Quran. Make sure that your relationship with the Quran is revived. If it's not doing well, bring it back. Recite, memorize, comprehend, spend time learning the Quran. You don't need a middle person between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He spoke to you, the book is right there. Speak to him yourself. You don't need a middle person, you don't need an interpreter. Just open up and read and connect with it. Listen to what he has to tell you and then make dua and speak to him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Revive that relationship with it. Find your heart in the Quran. Make sure there's a daily hizb. Every day read a little bit. If you can't do a full khatmah, do whatever you can. But read every day and reconnect with this book. This book is what saved us. And it will save us again. And until we understand that and turn back to it again, then we're going to continue to be lost. You go back to that book. Yeah, there's nothing else. There's nowhere else to turn. That is it. It's always been there. And we just have to find our way back to it again. Make sure that you focus on your invocation, your wird, every day. Invocate Allah. What you're hungry. What else are you going to do? After Asr, when you're starving and you have a headache, what are you going to do? What? Scroll. Khalas ya akhi. Sit there. اذكر الله. سبح. استغفر. هلل. حوقل. حسبل. صلي على النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام. Anything. Say words that connect you with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Learn to find beauty in saying His name and in saying the name of His Habib alayhi salatu wasalam. Find joy in doing that, especially when there's not much else that you can do that is safe at the time, when you're too tired actually to do anything else. It's a beautiful thing to do. Increase your knowledge. Invest in your knowledge, not just academically. Obviously, alhamdulillah, we're a very well-educated community, but invest in your Islamic understanding of things. Attend a daily dars or a weekly dars and make sure that you continue to do that after Ramadan. We run a bunch of stuff. I'll be running Asma' al-Husna after Fajr along with Surah Al-Ra'd in this masjid. We'll be running prior to Taraweeh. There'll be a dars. The dars will be explaining the juz' that will be recited in Salah. So if you're like, I don't pray Taraweeh because I don't understand what's being read, come 40 minutes before Taraweeh. Have a nice light iftar. Something light, a couple of dates, some water, some soup. Come in when you're nice and strong. Listen, I'll explain to you what's going to be recited. I'll point out the verses that are maybe interesting, and you have something to prepare yourself when you actually enjoy Taraweeh, so you can walk away with the benefit, inshallah, at the end of it. You can go eat later. There's food, don't worry. Wallahi, I feel even ashamed these days eating. Wallahi, every time I have something to eat or I drink, I feel ashamed. I feel embarrassed. I feel guilty. It's hard. I know it's not right, but I feel it. When I sit down and watch my kids eat, I feel bad. I feel like, what am I doing? How is this okay? How do I eat? And I know people over there are not eating and they're hungry and they're running around hoping for a little bit of wheat, standing in line fighting over a little bit of food. Wallahi, ya aibishu. Wallahi, it's so embarrassing that this is where we are. That can change. It starts with the change that you make inside yourself in Ramadan. I truly believe this. Wallahi, if I didn't, I'm not wasting it. This is where it starts. It starts with that spark that changes inside of you in Ramadan and then translates to something later afterwards. When you actually come and you advocate and you perform outreach and you educate and you speak and you help and you give your wealth and you give your time and you dedicate your life. Invest in your relationships with your spouse, with your parents, with your arham. Pick up the phone, call people you haven't called a long time ago. Mend relationships that are broken for whatever reason they're broken. Those relationships mean something. Our ummah cannot survive if we're broken, if we're divided, if we don't speak and we don't fix these problems. Those relationships, this is the time to work on it. An act of service. Make sure do some volunteering. Serve others. Do something for other people. Find the joy in giving. Find the joy in doing something for Muslims, whether they are appreciative for you or not. Just learn to serve. Whether it's giving sadaqah, or it's standing there in a parking lot, or it's helping a masjid run, or whatever it may be, or maybe taking care of kids so others can go pray. Do something for someone else. If you do that, by the way, and in your mind, if I wasn't doing this, I would be praying or reciting Quran. You get the ajr of both. You get ajr of both. If you're serving someone, but if you weren't, you would be praying. You got the ajr of the praying and the service. It is the best deal that exists within Ramadan. The absolute best deal. If you're doing an act of service, and if you weren't, you would be standing in prayer or reciting the Quran or doing something good. You get the ajr of both. Invest in your dua. Learn the art of dua. Learn how to speak to God. How many other relationships do you have with supreme beings that you do not see, touch, hear, or sense? Who? Do you have other relationships? Do you have a lot of practice at this? You don't. All the relationships you have are people who will speak to you in sounds you can understand. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks to you through a book. He doesn't speak to you directly. Or if he does, we haven't learned how to be sensitive enough to understand. So you have to actually invest in this art of speaking to Allah, of conversing with Allah, and understanding what He's saying to you. This relationship is worth investing in. So learn to make dua. And don't make that formal job interview dua. Make the dua that actually explains the difference of status between you as a creation and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a creator. And do it without the masks and the filters and the letters before your name after it and the big signature at the end of it. Just speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as you are. And it'll be very meaningful to you. The final piece I want to share with you, plan. Take half an hour a day within Ramadan and plan. Plan. God forbid we don't scroll when we're not having anything else to do. Get rid of your phone for half an hour. Just sit there and just think. What is it that's going to, what is your life story going to mean at the end? Like once we're out of here in 100 years, what was it that I lived for? What legacy did I leave? What was the outcome? What was the bottom line of the life that I lived? What did I do? Think about that. People who don't do that, by the way, can't figure out who they are later on in life, and they get lost. Sit down and plan. If you do that for 30 days, you will thank me, wallahi, at the end of it. If you every day for 30 days, take half an hour and just sit down and plan and write things out of who you hope to be and what you hope to do and what impact you hope to leave, and what defines you as a person, and what is it that you care about and what you want to work towards in your life. And you explain it. By the way, it'll never work. Your plan will always fail, just to let you know. It'll always fail. Almost impossible for a plan to work out. But what you end up with is a skeleton of it that means something to you, that allows you to understand what you're about, so that as life throws you those curveballs and you fall splat, and you stand up and it's a different place. If you told me 15 years ago I would be in a city called London, I would say that's in the UK now. I didn't even know the city existed. I wouldn't believe you. I'd laugh at you and kick you out 15 years ago. Look you don't know where life is going to take you. You don't know where life is going to put you in this world. Just make sure you know what you're about, so that wherever you land, you know you're still who you are, and you still believe in the same ideas, and you still have the same goals, so you work towards them. 30 minutes a day of planning, especially if you're younger, especially if you're high school, university, especially that. Sit down, write it down. It'll mean the world to you if you do. I hope that was a benefit to you. Inshallah ta'ala, we will start our Taraweeh, hopefully inshallah ta'ala Sunday night. Sunday, Isha will still be 7:45, so it'll be an early Taraweeh. The day after, because they changed the timing, Isha is going to be 8:45. So just remember, there'll be an hour later within the day for Salat al-Isha. We, alhamdulillah, have an extra a tent, a space outside this year to accommodate people, inshallah, for Taraweeh and for Jummah. It's important that people try to carpool when they come here, especially for Taraweeh. Try to not come in a car alone. Make sure that we respect the people who are helping with the parking. Try not to park in places that, don't park in places that you're not supposed to park in. And don't harm our neighbors or people who have homes around us, and just follow along with the rulings in terms of where to park. Otherwise, inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us a blessed month of Ramadan, that we enjoy it together, inshallah, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us not only His acceptance at the end of it, but also the opportunity to change as human beings. May Allahumma ameen. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ أَمَرَنَا بِأَمْرٍ عَظِيمٍ فَقَالَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. وارض اللهم عن الأربعة الخلفاء السادة الحنفاء أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي. وارض اللهم عن أزواجه أمهات المؤمنين وعن آله الطيبين الطاهرين وعن صحابته الغر المحجلين وعن التابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وعنا معهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم فرج هموم المهمومين ونفس كروب المكروبين وارفع الغم عن المغمومين وارفع الظلم عن المظلومين واحقن دماءنا ودماء المسلمين. اللهم احقن دماء إخواننا المستضعفين في فلسطين وفي السودان وفي غيرها من بلاد الأرض يا رب العالمين. ورد المسجد الأقصى إلى رحاب المسلمين. أخرج الصهاينة منه أذلة صاغرين يا رب العالمين. اللهم ردنا أجمعين إليك ردا جميلا وتب علينا من جميع ذنوبنا توبة نصوحة. اللهم بلغنا أجمعين شهر رمضان. اللهم ارزقنا فيه الصيام والقيام وغض البصر وحفظ اللسان واكتبنا أجمعين فيه من عتقائك من النار. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله